Welcome, folks, to episode 212 of the Morgue, the official Corpsefeed podcast. I am Arturo, Padilla, the guy behind the face, and with me always is Mr. Nick Valdez. Tex, what's going on, man?
Oh man, howdy everybody. Howdy Arturo. We got a packed show today, but buddies at home, you're probably looking at, our setup here and wondering, "Oh, where's the big conversation piece of the week?" Joker Folio Do. It's definitely a rough one. I will say that straight out, but we both of us didn't get a chance to see it, so we're gonna talk about that at a later point. Just as a heads up to anybody who might be interested in it over the weekend, or who are wondering our thoughts on it. My thoughts so far is that it's a long movie. It's definitely a long one, and I'm actually very curious on Arturo's thoughts. It's one of those things, Arturo. I'm gonna need you to suffer along with me so that we can actually figure this
Oh,
thing out.
listen, I will
Yeah.
definitely be suffering along with you. I know the wife wants to watch it, and we're trying to get our schedules aligned because
Yeah,
she's
and
working. So,
it's fine
um,
because we have a ton of other releases to talk
yeah,
about, and
absolutely. We have a
the
stocked month already as it is,
yeah,
but we will definitely be talking more in depth on the Joker on the
yeah,
next episode. So stay tuned for that
definitely.
one.
We'll have a full review. Just as of right now, buddies, just know you're going in and it's going to be a rough time. That's sorry, big spoiler that it's a rough one, but it's you. I feel like it's less of a spoiler and more of a warning. I feel like you gotta be ready. I know people like me, it's the same reason why I was like, oh, let's go see Megalopolis or whatever, because it's gonna be a bad time, but you just gotta know. It's
Someone's
like,
got to
yeah,
do it. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah,
Like
we gotta do
this
it.
is what we do, right? This is
We're
why
yeah,
we're here.
so
Someone's got
for
to do
full
it.
partly Joker thoughts, that's what you need to know for now. We'll have a full conversation when we both get to see it, so don't worry, that's coming. But for right now, let's talk about another superhero franchise with Thunderbolts. We got the
Yes.
first trailer for Thunderbolts earlier in this fall, and I'm into it because it's definitely like Suicide Squad vibes. It's like Marvel's Suicide Squad, but at the same time, I don't know.
Better?
It's yeah. It's kind of like the Agatha All Along thing. We talked about Agatha All Along, and and that show has been very interesting because
Yeah, it has been.
it doesn't seem like a Marvel project, which is it seems like it's doing its own different thing rather than trying to be a Marvel thing. And so you have this movie where it's like, yeah, it's trying to be a Marvel thing, but I don't know, it looks interesting. I don't know. What do you think, Arturo?
Yeah, I agree. It looks interesting. It looks well made from what the teaser. It was a teaser, right? Text, right?
Yeah,
It
yeah, it
wasn't
was
like
like
the full 4-minute trailer we're gonna get soon, probably,
yeah,
right?
we're gonna get a teaser two, and it's gonna be like 3-4 minutes.
Yeah,
Right, right.
it looks cool, man. I'm excited to see it because it feels like it's something going on with the Marvel train. You know what I mean?
Right.
It feels like they're finally starting to leave the station, start to chug along to the next stop. It's been a very rough go ahead for them to get that train rolling again. But I think with uh the Thunderbolts and with what they're doing with Agatha on Disney Plus, I think they're headed towards a uh, a good direction now.
I
Um,
think
I'm,
so too.
I'm interested in both. I'm fully active watching Agatha. I'm all up to date and all that stuff, and I am very interested in Thunderbolts. One, you have very interesting characters in both, right? Two,
Yes.
they're both antagonists, like in both shows. Like Agatha is a bad guy, and the Thunderbolts are a bunch of bad guys as well. So I am very interested to see how this all starts unfolding. You know, we got some big news over the summer that Robert Downey Jr. was gonna play Doctor Doom in some form or another in the Fantastic Four movie, or in I should say in the near future in one of those movies. I don't know exactly if he's gonna
I
pop
I
up
think
on
yeah,
Fantastic Four.
yeah, like he's gonna pop up somewhere, right? And that's the thing.
somewhere.
It's how is this all connected? How is this team eventually going to get thrown into like the Avengers story, whenever the Avengers start popping up again,
Yeah.
right? This is like a secret government team.
Yeah.
So yeah, like it's just like the comics. The Thunderbolts were like a team of villains in the comics that got thrown into things whenever
Yes.
big stuff started going down, because it's like it's an Avengers that they can control essentially. So it's like, that's the idea here, and
Yeah.
I'm curious to see where it goes, right? Like,
Yeah, I'm also very curious to see on how the Sentry looks when he does turn into the Sentry. Lewis
right.
Pullman is playing Bob, the Bob character in the teaser. That's the Sentry, which is like this Superman godlike figure with power of like how many suns or whatever.
Yeah, I'm wondering
So
if they're gonna do it like a Dragon Ball Z style,
yeah.
and he just like gets that Super Saiyan aura and
Yeah,
goes all gold, right? Like,
listen, honestly, dude, I want to see the whole suit. I love the Sentry. I'm sorry, it wasn't the Power of Suns. The Power is a black hole, I think it was that he has, and like, it's his suit's. It's fucking dope. Excuse my language. Like, it looks really cool on comic book. Um, I am very curious to see how they do that because I want to see how Marvel is flexing their CG muscles in this next coming phase. They left
I
us with a really bitter taste,
I know,
with the
yeah,
previous phase and
yeah,
how
and
all that
that's
turned out. So I am
they
very curious to see how things go, especially because this character Sentry is going to be a very it's a heavy CG character. You're going to have this guy flying around depending on how they choose to do it, right?
right, and
Yeah.
and that's the thing too. If they're doing less projects, right? Like, is the CG going to be better? Like, is the creative better? Like, what is going to be the benefit of
Yes,
doing these
exactly.
fewer projects,
Yeah.
if not visual fidelity at least, right? Like,
Yeah.
if these things don't look better, then what's the point of doing less of them? Like, I'm sorry to put it out there like that. And I
Oh,
know,
it's true.
but
It's
it's like,
true,
yeah,
right?
like, yeah, because if like before, everything like looked as bad as it did because, yeah, these artists were getting worked to the bone. So it's like, if you're not working into the like to the bone, at like, I hope they at least get to do what they do best, right? Like,
Yeah.
let them cook. Like, honestly, let them cook and give them
Yep.
time and give them the right production, and hopefully we I mean, if that's not the lesson they've learned, what is the lesson, right?
Yeah.
So we'll
Hopefully
see.
quality over quantity this time around
Yes,
for Marvel,
yes,
right?
that's the hope, and
Yeah.
it's the same for From the World of John Wick, Ballerina. So
Oh
we got
man,
the first trailer
heavy
for this as
heavy
well.
title there.
Yes, and it's funny because this is just Ballerina, but if you look it up, it's like full subtitle, full From the World of John Wick, because they definitely want you to know that this is like a John Wick spinoff, to the point where this trailer has probably the one scene that Keanu Reeves is going to be in. Right, this is
Probably, yeah.
it definitely seems that way. Like, they definitely Keanu Reeves is in this as John Wick, and he's like going, "You got to do what you got to do," basically do it, his John Wick lines, right? And my thinking was, oh, that's at the end of the movie. That's like this is the post credit scene where he pops
Yeah.
up. This is the one scene where he connects to the rest of the universe. But like, uh, I don't know.
I
I don't know how you feel about
I
this,
think
Arthur,
that
because like,
John Wick, I think the Wick, cameo might lead to like, her montage of sorts maybe, on becoming this full elite assassin.
right, right,
Um,
because
yeah.
this is an origin
Yeah,
story
it'd be
for
cool to
her.
see, like, her and John Wick in a shootout scene against some bad guys. That'd be dope to see, like, a tag team there. I don't
Uh,
know, to what extent Keanu Reeves wants to do this Wick stuff, but I think he's down for anything that comes his way regarding Wick. Because that's his honestly, that's his baby, you know what I mean?
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
that's his,
because like,
dude. Yeah.
even like, it's kind of funny that chapter 4 didn't release that long ago, right? It
Yeah.
hit like last year, and now he's already back in a new thing as John Wick, which is like, okay, you're getting by this as because it's like a flashback to whenever, whatever, right? Because this is before the end of chapter 4. I
Yeah.
won't spoil that just in case you haven't seen it, but it's before that ending. So it's like, well, okay, so is this the loophole that they get to like do more John Wicks, right? Do they do more like in between stuff? Because that's the thing, like we never got to see his proper Baba Yaga phase, right? Like
Yeah.
we didn't see John Wick until he was back. He was back in it. So it's like, oh,
Yeah. Yeah. We
is
didn't see.
this
Yeah, it's true because we didn't see peak John Wick
yeah,
technically,
we didn't
right?
see, but we saw the older Baba Yaga. We didn't see like the actual like, yo, this is
The
the super
retired one,
killer.
right? We
Yes,
got him after his retirement age. That's why I'm curious to see what they do with this one. I haven't watched any of the Continental stuff. I wasn't really
I
interested in
don't think
that.
it's good either. Like no one talks about it. No, like no one praised it either. Like
It's
I didn't
best
hear any.
forgotten, I guess, right?
Yeah, and like it's this ballerina movie, they've been trying to do it for a long time too. Like this is the other thing, they've been working on it for a minute, so like I hope it's successful, but this is just one of those things where like, yeah, they're gonna make a new John Wick franchise somehow, when it sucks because we're watching part 4 and then the standout character was that one that the what's his name's daughter from that remember where she
Oh,
was like
yeah, like in
also
the
hunting
Japanese
him.
hotel, right?
Yes, like she was also
Yeah.
hunting him down because she was like, oh, you killed my dad, and
Yeah, that
like
was
she was
dope.
like, and we had this whole story built in for her as like, oh, is this where you want to take it, right? And
Yeah.
I guess we're not doing that, right? I guess
I guess
they're
not, yeah.
you need the
Um,
big star to like,
but again, like, it just seems like, especially with, part 4, if you guys want to go back to the archives, we have a whole conversation about that,
we do, yeah.
with full spoilers and all that stuff, and we talk about the previous movies and all that, but yeah, but just to wrap up this conversation of Ballerina, I think with part 4, that John Wick universe was thrown a lot of stuff, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And they were hoping to see what stuck to the wall, right?
Tons
Right?
of world building, like
Yeah.
tons, like more so than the other three. Like it kind of got egregious as to how much lore they were adding to the rest of the world as they were on the way out. So like now, yeah, now Arturo's right. Now you're starting to see it flesh out with like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, this is how they're actually going to expand the world. But once again, I think I still have the same criticism that I did back then, where I'm like, I'm not really into it. I was into John Wick's story, and
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
even then, it went on for like one extra movie that it needed to, So
The only thing, honestly, that I'd be interested in is probably seeing, like, that peak John Wick, or how John Wick, a young John Wick getting into the business or something, you know?
yeah,
I think that
yeah,
would be the most interesting, story left in this universe.
like a
Aside from
prequel, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
a prequel, aside from having John Wick back, at some point or other if they wanna do that, but I think a prequel is definitely the best way to go just to kinda wrap up that whole John Wick universe finally, right? A
yeah.
and let Keanu Reeves live on for the rest of his life unless he wants to pull, like, an Iron Man thing, you
I
know?
mean, what else is he doing? And he
Doing a lot
also
of
like
martial
he
arts.
yeah, and from what we know about Keanu Reeves and his career, he seems like an agreeable dude. So like, if they want him to do more, and he'll likely do more because he has fun doing them, right? And
Like,
I don't
"Yeah,
know, like
vaya con
it's
Dios."
about time. Like if that's the other thing, like it's a superhero franchise has got to like pick him up somewhere. Like someone's got to. But even then, are superheroes a thing anymore? We'll talk about that later, or not today, but at another thing. We'll see where all that heads.
Yeah.
Uh, so moving on, we got the trailer for Don't Move, which is a new Netflix movie coming, and Netflix, is trying to get back into the game of
Big
like
time. Yeah, big
being
time. They
being relevant, right?
they
Of
are
like,
busy, busy streamer. This month alone, like, they're releasing a crap load of original movies and,
yeah,
TV shows, episodes, along with The Great British Baking Show, one of my
yeah, it's
favorites, so
back.
I'm
Hell
glad that's
yeah.
back, baby. But yeah, but they're super busy. I think they're trying to catch up here with what Disney Plus is doing, because now, like, Disney is just everything. They're just throwing everything at you. And there's all kinds of October, seasonal releases that all these streamers are trying to put out, and Netflix is no different. And This month alone, I think there's about at least 4 original movies coming out, along with Platform 2 that's already released. There's like an Anna Kendrick movie that she directed, her debut's on there. And then there's I think another movie about like swapping like identities and stuff that looks pretty sweet. And along with that, we also have this movie called Don't Move, which is super duper interesting and falls right in the spectrum of what we cover here on the Morgue and in Corpsefeed in
Yeah,
general.
and
Um,
it's also coming later this month too. Like
yeah,
it's
yeah,
getting on the so
it'll be
this
it'll be part of their spooky season release schedule for sure.
and there's a good chance we'll talk about it here if it's streaming, and if it's good, we'll give it a shot here,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So this it looks interesting because it's like it's a serial killer chase kind of looking movie, but the gimmick is the woman being chased is like paralyzed by whatever thing she got injected with. So I'm interested. It's a very unique kind of cat and mouse thing, right? I don't
yeah.
know. What do you, yeah, right? What are
Um,
you thinking?
I really dig it. I really dig it. I kind of love this concept, especially the fact that you put a time limit on it. You have
Yeah.
about according to the teaser or the trailer, you have 20 minutes until this um paralytic poison or antigen or whatever this person was given takes full effect, and they become completely paralyzed with just their eyes open, and they're completely aware, but their complete motor skills done. So I am interested to see how deep it goes in terms of like victims and in terms of like fodder and what we have to work with. Because in the trailer they show several people. And I don't know if they're gonna be like weaved in within the certain like within the same time frame as
Yeah,
this other
like
woman in the forest. That seems to be like a focal point. We don't know if that's just the first victim. You know what I mean?
that's true. Like
Yeah.
to what extent are we going
Yes.
to see it, right? Like is this
Exactly.
one of those stories where it's just the capsule of time of one event, right? Like is it going to be like a we're only going to see the one victim running from running from her fate through the whole thing, right? And is it going to be like a 90-minute one shot basically of like seeing her do all this stuff, or is
Yeah.
it going to be like Arturo said, it sort of weaving in all these other stories, and like uh we'll see. I don't know. They have me on premise alone, and the fact that it's going to be on Netflix, so it's kind of like a okay, it's it's a reason to turn on Netflix because
Yeah.
honestly, it's been a little bit of like a he's like outside of like British baking show. Like I don't think I've really used Netflix a lot.
Yes. Yeah, like I recently stopped on Netflix because my son just wanted to like browse like the horror section to see what he was able to watch, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I think they recently put on Evil Dead Rise on there, and It Chapter 2 and stuff like that. So they're putting some quality horror movies on there. But you are absolutely right. The quality of their own original studio stuff is not on par with anything um that the other streamers are actually putting out. So now is the time for them to step up, put up or shut up as they say, right? And put your
Right?
money where your mouth is, because now it's streaming wars, honestly, legit. We're in the middle of it now. Everything has gone that way, and I think
Yeah.
now Netflix has to make sure they are putting quality out there.
It,
They
it is wild that
Yeah,
they had it for like for years, right? Like
well,
they
because
they were it.
there was nobody in the game, you know?
Yeah, and then
When there's
as soon as
nobody in
people
the game,
that's what
you're the only
sucks
game in
because
town, right?
yeah, they had the licenses for everything. Like
Yeah,
for people who might not remember in the early days when Netflix was it's when you had to put like a disc inside like your player to like actually make it like you know
listen, it
yeah
came in a nice red sleeve, and
yeah
then
yeah
it
you
came in a little like a library, like a rental disc thing
yeah
with a
yeah
description, and then you would send it in right in that disc. Listen, I was I've been a member of Netflix. I forget how long the site told me, but for fuck long, ever since
Yeah, it's
DVDs, before the streaming
basically, yeah,
stuff.
since
Yeah.
like the beginning, right? Because like
Yes.
even when it first came out, it was like such like a novel idea,
Dude,
and
also,
so
like,
it's so cool and much
that's where
cheaper too. Yeah,
yes, it was cheap, and they had a lot of, like, awesome movies on there, like, a lot of movies you couldn't find even on torrents and stuff like that, you know what I mean, back in
yeah.
the day,
When
like,
they
especially
started,
with horror, dude. Like, I
yeah,
saw a ton load of horror movies because of Netflix, man.
yeah, like same here. I've seen a ton of movies because of Netflix, and over the years, as more companies like their licensing deals expired
Yeah,
and like they went on to form their own thing,
yeah,
they lost those big shows. Like they
mhm,
lost the big movies that they had. Like one of the big blows was like The Office. Like, yeah,
yeah,
Office, you know, you might not watch it like every day, but there are people who do, right? There are people who constantly watch The Office. That's their comfort show. And when Netflix lost a show like that, that was like the beginning of the end, where it's like,
yeah,
oh, I
agreed.
can't watch The Office on here anymore. So why would I have Netflix? And it started like that. And you started to see less shows. And Netflix started to try and fight that by doing their own things. And then here we are. Like it was just the snowball effect.
Here
So
we
now
are with
to the
4
point,
Rebel Moons later, right? Pretty
yes,
much.
to the point where Netflix is now trying to play catch up to everyone else when it's so funny that they were really the biggest game in town. And now all of a sudden it's like they're dead last because it's you don't use it anymore because they're not the people you think of when you want to watch stuff. Like
You
it's
think
like
of Rebel Moon and then you just walk away, you know?
yeah, yeah. It's like, oh, I want like the only reason to go to Netflix now is to watch their exclusives. And
Yeah.
you know, and it's gonna be movies like Don't Move that gets us to go back and click on it. Like the platform. You mentioned that. I saw like the first half of Platform 2, and you know, I'm like, yeah, I don't know if Platform needed a sequel, but they got me. They got me click. You know, they got my click. The same with the platform, and that came out. We watched the platform, so keep doing it, Netflix. Do what you can.
Yeah, I mean, listen, again, the fact that this content is available at home to everyone, mostly
Yep.
everyone, because a lot of people have Netflix, right? So the fact that this content is available, to everyone who has a Netflix subscription, it's paramount. It's huge, right? Like
Right.
this is why a lot of actors and stuff like that, like
Then
George
they
Clooney, Brad Pitt,
started trying to do the password crackdown or whatever. Don't do
oh
that,
yeah,
Netflix. Yeah, no. If
yeah, no, no,
come
no,
on,
no.
no.
No, but
People will
like
get their like
but
yeah.
like a lot of people now are a lot of actors, like A-list actors, Gyllenhaal, Brad Pitt, George Clooney, they've like kind of, you know, already fell in love with the concept of the streaming world because it gives their fans access to their movie, right? For like who knows how many people can watch it. You know what I mean? Like in one day, in comparison to releasing it in theaters. You know what I mean?
Right.
So a lot of these actors and stuff like that are now falling in love with this idea of, hey, let me get a deal with
Yeah,
with Prime
dude.
or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, because not everyone's Tom Cruise. You know, like
Yes.
at the end of the day, not everyone's like, you know, when you hear Tom Cruise going, "Oh yeah, you should see this in the theater," you kind of understand it. You're like, you know what, Tom Cruise, you're right because you're gonna give me Mission
Yes.
Impossible 10. You're
Yes,
gonna give me
exactly.
Top Gun. You're gonna give me Top Gun. You know, Super Moon or something.
Yes.
Like you're gonna give me those experiences, right? You're gonna give me blockbusters. I'm gonna want to sit there in the theater. But like you said, if George Clooney's like, oh, come and see Brad Pitt and I in this movie Wolves, now streaming on Apple, I'll be like, okay, that's more reasonable than telling me to go. You
Yeah.
only need to see this in
Oh,
theaters. You know, it's no, like you're right, Arthur. The messaging now is more come see this in theaters if you can, but if not, watch it when it streams, right? Like instead of like when it was post pandemic and you started seeing messages before each movie going, oh, thank you for coming to see our movie the way it was meant to be seen. But it's like,
it's like,
no,
"Listen, I
like
saw your movie on a small screen in the
yeah.
bathroom while I was using it, and it looked just the same,
and
if not
we
even better on my Retina screen." You know what I mean?
and
Like,
as buddies at the morgue will know, the more like the people like those movies that we saw where they were thanking us for seeing it the way meant to be seen, we're not like sometimes we're not good. Like it's like yeah, like sure, we saw it at a big screen, but we watched trash on it, and what
Oh my god, a lot of
it's
trash, dude.
So it is funny to see how streaming's changed and how movies are presented now. And it's funny because leading into our big combo for this week, it's all streaming.
It's all
So
streaming. That's right, folks. This week we have a double feature presentation, and all from the comfort of your living room. Right? Stay tuned. And we are back, and we have a double feature presentation for you fine folks at home. And this is perfect because this is for movies that you could watch at home. And the first one on our docket for the day is the Shudder Original VHS Beyond. The last time we visited the VHS Anthology universe was last year's VHS 85. And me and Tex both agreed that that was one of its finest releases since the original VHS.
yeah,
It was well put together. The movies were all very thematically linked, and they all looked great, and they all gave you something different to kind of chew on. You know what I mean? While still keeping you within that same headspace of the anthology. And unfortunately, I have to say that this new one, VHS Beyond, doesn't really hit the same way, unfortunately. And for that, before I totally break it down with you guys with text, I will say this is a wait for it. You don't have to rush to Shutter to watch VHS. You don't have to go to Prime or AMC Plus to rent this thing for the spooky holiday. This one for sure is a wait for it, and I think you should just go watch 85 if you really want the full concept of an anthology. To be honest with you. But yes, Tex, what'd you think of VHS Beyond?
now I think you said it best, Arturo. Like it really is just like if you want to see a VHS, watch VHS 85.
Yeah,
Watch the original because this one ain't it, but like this one is like in terms of anthologies, it's got like it's basically like it's got 5 stories, and then you have the overall package, but it's like a 3 out of 5. Like three out of the 5 are like
good.
interesting.
Yes.
Yeah, like honestly,
Yeah.
yeah, like no kid gloves for this. Like three
Yeah.
out of the 5 are good, and the
Yeah.
other 2 are whack. So it's like that's still a passing grade, but it's not one that you're gonna be sitting
Yeah.
there putting on the fridge, right? You're not gonna
It's not gonna be like, oh my god, you gotta watch this thing.
yeah.
You have 2 hours of awesomeness. Like, no, it's no. Let's hold our horses here. And like Tex mentioned, it is a tale of two cities, kind of, because you have a total of 5 shorts, plus the 6, which is the overall theme of the of this VHS, which is beyond, which is sci-fi, and even on the poster they say space on there, beyond
Yeah, like
space.
the
Um,
the whole the whole thing, it's like packaged around
yeah,
space oddities and like paranormal, and even the whole like setup of itself. It's like one of those ancient aliens type of documentaries
yeah,
where people are like, oh, we're looking at UFOs and what's real and what isn't and all that stuff. And so when you get the first like space one, it starts you out very strongly. Like it starts you out
super
with
strong.
yeah, like so the first one, it's called Stork or
Yeah,
something,
stork,
but like
the
I kept
stork.
calling
Yeah,
it Warden because their team name is Warden, and you see Warden is the first thing you see in the short. So I
yeah,
don't know
with
why it was
stork
called
though.
Stork.
Well,
Yeah,
because of of what we
because
see
of the
afterwards. Yeah,
yes. So full spoilers for VHS Beyond because we kind of have to talk about these shorts in a way to like, yeah,
yeah,
just to like get through them, right?
it's the
So
only way.
yeah, Stork has a very good presentation. I liked it. It's like gunfights in a house. It's a very interesting idea in
Very
terms of like
violent, very bloody. It was good.
yeah, and in terms of like being an actual feature story, right? Like this is one of those things where you're like, yo, I could see this as a pitch towards like a much larger
Oh yeah,
kind of
absolutely.
project, right?
Yes.
Yeah, like it's a cool project. It's a cool group. Like they're like a group of cops, but clearly it's like a cops in like some special group, and like they're fighting monsters in a house. You don't really get what the idea of those monsters are. It's like, oh, maybe they're vampires, maybe it's something, right? Maybe they're ghouls. And then there's like little details you get throughout it of like them all like having their heads bandaged up, and then you
Yeah.
get like a cool zoom in look, and it's like an empty brain,
Yeah. An empty
and
skull, man. It's great. There's no brain in it.
yeah,
And it's a very cool visual, especially because everything again, this is all found footage stuff you get on these VHS movies, and they did a very good job of just keeping you in the action, and but then also keeping the action very uh illegible, right? Like you knew
yeah,
exactly what was going on at all times. And I think they did a very good job of that, especially because it was very chaotic. And then once you get to the climax of Stork, it's wild. Pretty much like there's this like stork like looking alien monster thing
yeah.
that is like legit sucking the brains out of people to then regurgitate it into like these babies, right? Which
Yeah, and
I
it's
don't know if
turning the
yeah.
it's like turning the babies into like little stork alien monster things,
Yeah,
right?
it
And
is the
it's
gnarliest thing, man.
it's a gnarly visual, and that's the thing with VHS, like the with the franchise in general, you kind of get that, right? Like
Yeah, absolutely.
through all of them, basically, it's like, oh, we're all waiting for the reveal of what the thing is, right?
Yeah.
Like what the
Mhm.
and Stork starts it out strong. And it's so strong that you're like, oh man, I'm ready for the rest of this, right? And then it's followed up by, oh man, I already forgot which one followed
Pretty
up by
Girl,
because
I think it's called, right? Or something like
oh
that?
yeah, yeah. It's oh yeah,
The Indian
it's
one.
yeah, it's this
Yeah.
one set in India, and it's like all in Hindi and stuff like that, and
Yeah.
like and it's this pop star who I don't mind the characters in it if
No,
that
yeah.
makes it like
No,
the
like,
character
it's
setup.
fine. Like, yeah,
It's
so
like a
before we continue,
paparazzi.
it's like, I wrote in my, review basically that as a whole, right? Like,
Yeah,
this thing, it doesn't work as a whole, but if you break down these shorts individually, they work, you know? Like, the stories work. Like, they're not the best in quality, probably, but if you set them apart one by one by one and judge them individually, they all do work.
yeah.
This one works as well. It's like two paparazzis trying to make it big in the Bollywood game because to have the sneak peek and the exclusives, pretty much,
Right.
and they have this huge Bollywood star that has just come into the game, and they want to get the exclusive pictures of her and her trailer and all this other
And then
paparazzi
it
nonsense, right?
turns
Yeah,
out she's a robot, and it's
yeah,
like, okay, it kind of like it sets the tone in a weird way too, because like she like kills everyone, and it kind of takes a long time, and
yeah, yeah.
it loses steam after the robot reveal, honestly, which is like sort of like what makes it so whack. And secondly, it's not an alien thing, so you're like, all
Nah.
right, I guess this is going to be like sci-fi. And then the third one, once again, it's like it's a peak. You're like, oh, this is great. It's people skydiving.
Mhm.
A UFO flies by, they crash. So you see them
Yeah,
falling,
that was a
which
cool
is like
visual to the great sequence
super
in the air,
gnarly,
man.
right?
Yeah,
Like, however,
absolutely.
that's what VHS is for, right? This is for the the POVs and
Yeah, let's
like
try something
that.
new shit, you know what I mean?
Yes,
Yeah,
this is what they're supposed to be, right?
yeah.
And so and you get like this chase because you get the alien chasing after them through like an orange grove, and you get gnarly kills too, and like it's great. It's such a good little section, and then it's followed by like
Fur babies.
some yeah, it's followed by a lady who like turns people into dogs,
Yeah,
and it's like oh
legit the title is called Fur Babies, and it's
yeah,
written and directed by Justin Long and his brother Christopher Long.
yeah, I guess
Yeah,
doing Tusk, where he got turned into a walrus, gave him the idea to eventually turn people into dogs.
I guess
And
so.
good for Justin Long. I'm glad
Yeah.
he's like in horror. I'm glad he's like sticking around and like really
Yeah, good
finding
for
his
him.
way.
That's fine.
Yeah,
I'm cool with
but
that.
this didn't belong here, right? Like
Again,
it's
yeah, like again, like by itself, cool little short, right?
yeah,
Awesome thing I'd see on the internet. Oh, great job, Justin Long. That's a
yeah,
cool
yeah.
little short
If
movie,
it was
right?
like on YouTube, right?
Yes,
Like
if
if
it
you
was by
yes,
itself, again, standalone, like these stories work, right? But then you put it after that skydiving one, dude, which was like
yes,
it had your adrenaline fucking pumping through like
yes,
through the whole thing because you're like, holy shit, because you're enclosed in this little plane with all these people about to skydive, and the guy who has the POV is freaking out because it's the first time he's doing it. It's like his birthday or some shit like that, and like it's just a really well done like alien sky fight, the jets and all that stuff, and you get this kind of like quality like half blockbuster. You know what I mean? Like
Yes.
like in this short in 22 minutes or whatever it was. But then you get Fur Babies, which is like a complete come down, you know? Um, same with Pretty Girl after the Stork one, you know? Like it's just a complete come down of vibes, of suspense, of tension, of all the emotions that this thing is supposed to give you throughout the experience of the anthology. It's all kind of sucked and vacuumed out because of these two specific ones, right?
Yeah, it's bad booking.
Yeah,
It's bad.
absolutely.
Like, you know, you understand, like, watching the whole package, you get the flow of it, right? You're like, okay, here's one good one, here's the alien one, and then here's the one that's, in the middle, in between, and then here's another alien one
Yeah.
to like keep it going. But like when you get to the finale, and it's the one directed by Kate Siegel and written by Mike Flanagan, and it's another great short, and you're like,
Yes.
oh, okay, it's got the kind of ending where like it leaves you on a doom like kind of vibe, and you're like, yeah, this
What a
rules.
cool ending too, man. Like what a
Yes, like
cool concept too, man.
it's
Damn.
such a cool idea. It's like a
Yeah.
young journalist who's like trying to like make a name for herself. She's investigating aliens, walks onto a ship and like starts flying out. But like the real gimmick is that she's healed by like the ship every time she's injured. And she keeps getting constantly injured on the ship because of hyperspace. And it's like slowly turning her into like a monster hybrid thing. And it's like, it's
It's so
wicked. Like it's,
yeah, because like it's turning her into what's the optimal,
yes, the thing for
creature
space,
to
right? Yeah.
survive this stuff, right? Because
Yeah.
you get some really nice visuals of like when the ship first takes off, she gets injured there, and it's a cool, like, just visual there. And then when the ship goes to hyperspace, like, she gets all jacked up because she's flying around, not strapped into anything, right? So I really, really love that one. I love the skydive one. I love the sci-fi ones. That's the
Yeah,
problem here. Like,
which sucks, right? Because
yes,
the beyond when it's good, it's very good.
yes,
And
but then
it's
you
like,
have
yo,
these 2 that
yes,
just
yes, weigh it
completely
down.
take
Yeah.
away all that goodness. Honestly, in this one, like, the bad outweighs the good because those 2 are so different. They leave their own impression as well, and you kind of forget about how good it could have been if they just gelled those 3 stories together, instead of having the 2 in the middle. And then even that last one to wrap everything up in VHS, they have this other story about this guy who was getting too close to alien stuff, and then an alien visited him, and that was also very cool, man.
Yeah,
You know,
it's cool, like final visual for the because
yeah.
the
So
alien design's really wicked. So
yeah,
it's like,
yeah.
yeah, you see the rest of this, and you're like, wow, this is a great package. This is great stuff. But you're so right, Arturo. The 2 stand out so egregiously that it brings down the rest of the movie, and
Yeah, the
it's
experience is
unfortunate.
definitely taken
And
down notches
and
because of
that's the
that.
thing, right?
Mhm.
Like in terms of the shorts by themselves, they are fine, right? But it's because they're in this package, we have to view them as part of the overall experience. Like we're
That's it.
watching a full movie. Like
Mhm.
we're not watching. Yes, we're watching an anthology, but the way VHS is set up is to where it's not just shorts cut together. Like it really is. They, especially over the years, they've attempted to turn them into like features, right? Like
Yeah.
this is the thing. It's like
Everything connects, you know what I mean? Yeah.
it's like a creep show sort of thing where it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, like you're getting a full package of anthologies, but you want to see all of it, you want to see it all come together. And so because of that, it wrecks the experience. Like that's unfortunate. And that's what makes it not as good as 85, because 85 didn't have that problem.
Nope.
Yeah, one was weaker, but it was still fit within the entire package. Like it wasn't so different from the other stories that it was just. And it's a shame because when this one is good, it's very good. It's got wicked visuals and everything. Like that skydive one still kind of stands out as my favorite. Like
Yeah,
it's
that's
like, yo,
that's my favorite one as well. It's just really
just the
well
falling
done.
out of the plane,
Oh,
like that was, yeah, like just
yeah.
getting to see that angle. And like, yeah, I don't I I don't know how they pulled it off. Like I guess they really fell out of, like, they had to have jumped out of an actual plane, right?
I
So
think so too.
like
Because like it's a short, so they're not gonna invest or not invest, but they're not gonna have the budget. You know what I mean, to have that big
right.
all CG. But like again, just to wrap up this first feature here of this double, um, this thing was almost 2 hours long, right?
Yes,
And
yes.
if you would have taken out Fur Babies and Pretty Girl, that would have been 40 minutes taken out of that hefty runtime, and then you have a more cohesive theme, a more cohesive experience. So that's my big gripe with this movie. This is why I gave it a 6 out of 10. And this is why I tell you guys could wait for this one um whenever you want
Yeah,
to really get a
watch some
trial or something. But
yeah,
go
like
watch 85.
watch
Yeah,
some other stuff on Shutter first,
yeah,
right? Like watch
if anything, you know what? Go on Tubi and watch VHS 1 and 2. I know it's on
yeah,
there. I was just
yeah.
on there the other day browsing. All right. So it's nice and free. You can get the experience that is really like needed off of this VHS anthology. All right.
Right.
So moving on to our a second of our double feature presentation, folks. We have another one for you on a major streamer. This time it is on Max. And this time a major name. It is Stephen King's Salem's Lot. It is a remake of the 70s movie, and a very shorter remake because the 70s one
Yeah,
is about 3 hours long.
that's what I was gonna say. I
Yeah.
was like, one I have not seen. I will openly admit to that. I
Yeah,
have not
same.
seen that original Salem's Lot. We've talked in the past about how I feel about Stephen King. So people know about that, and but in watching this with Arturo, this okay, so this is another wait for it in the sense that, like, streaming was the perfect release. Like, it
Yes.
was. I looked it up, Arturo, because it's funny watching this. You see the little kid you see Homelander's son from The Boys, right? And you're like, oh, he looks like a little kid still. He
Yes,
doesn't
he
like look
does.
like the grown ass man that he does in the Boys. Apparently, this one finished production in like 2022. So
Oof.
so this was one of those that Warner Brothers was either gonna throw out or, like, eventually, like, they really just
They were
sat
gonna
on this.
Batgirl this thing, right? Pretty much.
Yes, like, they literally sat on this and then finally decided to throw it on Max because that's better than nothing. And honestly, like, I don't see the big issue. Like, I'm watching, like, it's. I don't. What do you think, Arturo?
Um,
How did you feel about it?
I thought it was fine. I thought it was a good
Yeah.
watch. I honestly found it more entertaining than I expected it to be. Um,
Right.
I've seen bits and pieces of the old one, but I've never seen the full thing before. And if this is what it is, right? Since it's a remake, I think I'm good with this version, right? I don't think I want to
Right.
sit through a 3 hour version of this movie. Being that like 3 hours for what? There's no reason to really um, there's no reason to really expand this thing because eventually everyone, spoilers,
Yeah. Yeah. Because
eventually
it's.
everyone becomes fodder in this movie.
Yeah, because Salem's Lot, it's a town that's, like, seen better days. It's like, and businesses are starting to dry up and they're getting bought out. And I think that's, like, one of the themes of the movie. It's like, because, or in this one, the sheriff, as he's driving out, or I think that's what his character was. He was telling Alfred Woodard, he's like, yo, this is what's happening in our town. It's dying. And this is just, I think it's that kind of thing, right? It's small town America getting wiped out by, like, corporate interests and all that
And
stuff, right?
vampires, but
Yeah,
right?
yeah, and I think that's what the theme was. It was like small town life is, like, getting thrown, and
Yeah,
you
it's
get the.
like being sucked, like being sucked lifeless, like from a vampire and commercialism and all this other cool
Yeah,
stuff.
it's.
But
I think the other one is probably, like, fleshing out the town more and fleshing out that theme, but at the same time,
Which again, if the ending is the same and they all fucking die, why do I want to
yeah,
spend
yeah,
$2 with these people?
because
You know what I mean?
ultimately they're all fodder anyway, and they all turn into
Yeah,
vampires, and,
I'm
like,
good off
it's.
that.
Yeah, and it's. Do you need to spend 3 hours to get to the same point? No, I don't think so. And especially when this one looks to be like they intentionally kind of, like, did it 70s style of, like, it doesn't really feel modern. Like, no one like, people speak like they're in a Stephen King book. Like, they
Yeah,
they they have, like, they have kooky like little lines, and
I
like
mean,
they
this is probably why it stayed on the shelf for like 2 years after
yeah,
it was
and
done,
the
right?
town feels kind of like anachronistic in terms of like, oh, it's real small town stuff. It's real like this isn't the 2000s. You know what
No,
I
it's a
mean? Like
cookie
this
cutter
is
small town you see in like in the Superman movie, the first one
yeah,
that
like
came out.
and yeah, in the author, Lewis Pullman, he's like looking through the library of like he's looking through the microfiche. It's like yeah, no one does that. It's stuff like that, right? Where it's
We
like
have
all
Google
right,
now and
yeah,
Wikipedia.
yeah, and it's like he's not on a computer. He's literally like on one of those
You
old
know what though,
machines that
Tex?
used to look.
I'm glad you brought that up because you have a great point. Especially in this topic. Like it would have been a fantastic idea to modernize this thing, right?
Yeah, I
Like,
mean, if you're
why
gonna
the
do a
fuck
new
not, right?
one, like, because
Like, why not?
I guess if you're like if you have to, maybe is that the deal with Stephen King? Like, if you're adapting one of his things, you can't like change it too much.
Dude,
But
that's such another fucking great point. Dude, I've
yeah,
never seen a Stephen King movie that's been like
like take the idea,
modern.
right?
Oh, the
Right? Yeah,
only one that's been like kind of modern, you
is it
know,
right? And even it was like,
even
even
that was
it's
updated. No, but like thinner, right? Like
oh
thinner was
yeah,
probably like the most one with like the modern technologies and the modern times in there,
right?
right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that's another
Yeah.
reason why
Love that movie.
Thinner's good.
Yeah.
That's another like
Thinner,
that's the
low
thing.
key, man. Go
Yeah,
watch
like
Thinner, folks. Don't worry about the shining nonsense. All right. Don't worry about like, freaking all this other, it like 3 hours, 4 hours on it. Don't do that. All right.
yeah,
Go watch
go
Thinner,
watch
bro.
it. Go watch it chapter one and go watch Thinner. Those are the good ones. Oh, and then Doctor Sleep. Like Doctor Sleep's another good one.
Yes, it
But
is.
but that's the thing. Once again, Doctor Sleep doesn't feel like it was made in the 1970s. Like,
No,
but
Flanagan did a good job with that
for
movie for
some
sure.
reason, Salem's Lot is intentionally trying to capture that vibe, and I guess because it's doing the exact same story. Like, it's eventually like the author comes to this town. This town is overrun by vampires, and like that's the movie. Vampires attack. You get a little kid involved as like one of like the main people like fighting against them. Mike,
Good kid too.
he's
Yeah.
yeah, good kid actor. I bet he's grown now by how long it's been since this movie got
He's
made.
probably fucking 6 feet
Yeah,
tall by now, bro.
he's definitely a
In
grown
high
ass
school with a
man.
mustache and shit.
He's a grown ass man by this point because like I'm watching it, I'm like, oh, this is a solid kid actor. I
Yeah.
can't wait to see him in more. But then looking at the production day, and I'm like, oh, okay,
And
so he's definitely grown. He's
and
a son. He's one.
so like about that character and that actor, Mark, I think was the character's name. He's so good that he kind of steals all the scenes and stands out
Yeah,
amongst everyone. Even
he's
Lewis Pullman's very run of the mill, kind of like not
it's
doing much,
hilarious because he's it's the Stephen King like idea of like kids being involved in danger, and
Yeah.
which is why a lot of his stories like have kids involved, and it like I appreciate that element to it. But then also it's to the point in this movie where he's doing everything. Like the kid's the only one being proactive in the situation of like, oh, I'm gonna kill the main vampire guy.
Yeah, I don't
And
know if that's like, what the story says or how the
yes,
first one is, but
because
okay,
that's the thing. It's
it was
like, yeah,
fine, you know?
and that's the thing. Like, that's kind of the vibe of this whole movie, right, Arturo? Like, where it's just fine. Like this movie, it's not the worst thing I've ever seen. Like,
No, it's
but
not, but it does do a couple of very neat, cool tricks
yes,
that
yes, yes,
I definitely have to shout out before we wrap this conversation up. Because we are dealing with vampires, it does this thing with the cross, right? That like the cross starts glowing in the presence of a vampire, which is fucking super neat. And then on top of
it's
that,
super cool.
like
Yeah,
it's not like the vampire just like put that thing away. No, this thing fucking has a recoil to it where like it just pushes the vampire back all the way. So it gives this like force field thing, which I thought was super cool. And I'm like, damn, that's a really nice idea. I wish it
yeah.
wasn't wasted here.
I know, and I do hope. Like, I wonder if that's a thing that was in the original too, right? Because it's such like a unique kind of
Yeah.
idea that like, oh, was, and that's the funny thing too. It's because they call it's called a force, right? In this movie, like the belief is a force,
The
and it's like cool.
Schwartz.
Yeah, and it's like, oh, and you see it physically used. Like Arturo said, it's such a cool effect that like it's sad that it's never been replicated. You know, it's never been like no one's ever tried to do the light up cross like pushing back. It's cool. And then the third act is cool too when you know the whole town's vampires and they have to stop them, and so they go to the drive-in once again, one of those 1970s things that makes sense, right? Like the vampires are all in cars because they're in the trunks to like hide themselves through the day, and
which is pretty cool
idea.
Well.
Yeah, I really like the idea, and like the whole fight is to like get the like they knock down or Mark drives and knocks down like the drive-in screen to like
expose
keep
the sun some more.
Yeah, and it's like it's fun stuff. Like it's a fun little final act. It's a good little fight, good little set piece.
And the Barlow vampire bad guy dude looks really cool too. I like the look of him too. His little
it's a very
eyes
classic looking, like Nosferatu type look, right?
Yeah.
They gave him like a very like you think vampire, there's your vampire, right? It's not your Bela Lugosi type Dracula.
No,
but
these guys
just,
are bald. You know, these guys are bald and like pale. So
yeah, and there's your vampire, and he's defeated in a cool way too. Like they like stick the like his stake through the mouth and then through the chest, and it's like it's
cool a great visual.
Yeah, it's good stuff. But you know, then you get through that first half of the movie to get there, and it's very like stiff. It's very like, okay, we're a small town and
for a short movie, it really moves kind of slow.
Right.
Which kind of sucks because like it's very action packed after like the middle of the second act.
Yes.
So but yeah, I don't know if the original is this actiony even in the last act, but I'm not gonna sit through 3 hours to find out. Maybe one day I will.
I mean,
but
even then,
you're gonna
watch it to get the same story because this is exactly like the other one. Something tells me, right? Something tells you watching this,
it's gonna be
the
exact same shit, right? Yeah, sure. Folks. That being said, Salem's Lot is now available on Max to stream at any time you'd like. Watch it during the holiday spooky season. It is a fun watch in terms of it'll just kind of pass by if you have it in the background, and you can kind of follow it all throughout.
It's definitely like it's definitely a laundry movie, right? Or this is definitely like a
great way to put it.
Passing out candy movie where like you're sitting outside most of it, and then when you come back in to get more candy, you're like, oh hey, vampires.
You haven't missed the thing. Yeah, exactly. But if you do want to watch a really good vampire movie, go search out 30 Days of Night, which is my favorite vampire movie, and go watch Blade if you can find it too. But yeah, VHS Beyond is available on Shudder and on AMC Plus, anywhere you guys can get that stuff. But you guys can wait and watch the other VHSs before you hit this one up. And folks, thank you so much. This has been episode 212 of The Morgue, the official Corpsefeed podcast. I am Arturo Padilla, the guy behind the face. And with me always is Mr. Nick Valdez. A big shout out goes to Mr. Delvirus for all the artwork you've seen in front of you throughout the years. And a big shout out goes to you guys for listening. We have 211 of these episodes anywhere you get your podcast streams, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, all those great places. Please like, subscribe, and share. Give us some ratings. Drop us a review. We'd highly appreciate it. And go on over to the YouTube and subscribe to Corpsefeed on there, where you can see the Morgue dropping every Tuesday. And you can also catch the Morgue live on Twitch, on Facebook Live, and on X Live as well. Go, again, drop us a review, like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. Catch us on all the socials. And once again, folks, remember, it is a scary world out there, but we are here to walk you through it.